Good morning. Welcome to today's Morning Moxie with Larisa. So, is it time for you to exit stage left, exit to success? So, the media is hammering the idea about the Great Recession, or excuse me, the Great Resignation, noting that many workers will just decline to go back to work once the office is open again. Now, I really wondered where they had gotten that information. And I did read recently, I want to say this past weekend, they were more speaking toward the Gen Z and Millennial group, which I mean, I could see that. There are a bunch of wild ponies in that age group. So I guess that kind of makes sense because I was thinking about people who were slightly more mature. You can't just pull up stakes as easily as you used to because there's much more at stake, frankly. But anywho, I'm wondering, will you be joining the presumed masses? So a couple of things to think about if you decide that, I'm not ready to go back. Now, it has been, the pandemic, if you will, started in January. So that would make it, well, a year, almost 2 years. But the actual shelter in place happened in March. So that would make it about 18 months. Doesn't really matter, tomato, tomato, right? It's been a long time. And if you were, as we call it, one of the lucky ones who was able to continue your job and work from home, then, I think for remote workers, things look a little differently than the people who have not been working at all, who've maybe been on unemployment or they were just flat out laid off and did not get, will not be returning to the same job. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of mixed, what is that called? It's a mixed crowd, if you will. And of course, the media is going to pick on the most startling version to call out. But I know it's going to happen for a lot of people. That part I do believe because there's been there's a lot going on. And I think a lot of it actually has, I would say, includes a failure of communication from the higher ups because, I just don't think employers or companies, however you want it, corporations have done a good job communicating a workable plan for, what the workplace will be like post-COVID. So there have been many suggestions as to why people want to scoot. As I said, there have been fears about company policy or changes as far as COVID precautions or the lack thereof, because some people just, how do you make people feel safe about coming back into a enclosed environment with little to no fresh air circulation, especially if you work in a cubicle farm? That is going to be a challenge. Working remotely it's worked out just fine. Work is still getting done. The numbers are, coming in. So why do I have to go back to the office? And definitely nobody wants to deal with that commute, I am sure. There's been a lot of talk about people who relocated during the shelter in place. For example, they moved from the urban environment, a small apartment, to a house in the suburbs, or suburbs. It feels like such an old word, but they moved away because they were home more, so they wanted more space, and they bought a house that is not close to work anymore, so probably not ready to go back to the office. And I think one other thing that I'm not sure, I have not seen this talked about, but I know I feel it personally, is that there have been loosened bonds with your work family. There's no FaceTime, there's no togetherness, there's no banter around the coffee pot or the water cooler. So, I mean, you don't have any ties. There's nothing to go back to work. I have always said, work is work, but what makes a difference is people that you work with. And having worked remotely for, over a year, almost 2 years, people don't have the same connection, I think. Expert that I'm not. So whatever your reason, if you decide that it's time to go, I just really want to make sure that you are exiting to success. And so that means you have to have a plan in place. So while the economic recovery is moving and probably growing, there are still some uncertainties in place. The Supply chain is still got some major kinks in it. You know, people can't get the parts or the supplies that they need. Everything costs more. So you have to really consider how that really might impact employability. Maybe you can't go back to your job, depending on what your job was. Maybe it no longer exists. So consider whatever you do is to have a cash cushion, because for a couple of reasons. Number one, we don't ever want to have to do this again, right? And for the people who were hit hardest by, not having savings, we want to make sure that doesn't happen to you. So you need savings. And again, another reason to have multiple streams of income. But what do I want to say? Because when you start a new job, there's a delay in the time from, the date of hire to the day you get your first check. So make sure that you have some funds set aside so that you can make it until that first check comes in. But make sure that you research opportunities so that wherever you land higher up the ladder. We want you to do better than what was that, 2019, do better than 2019. So if you need more training, maybe you need to take get a quick certificate or take a crash course in something so that you can at least speak the language. Research industry pay so that you can negotiate from a position of strength, so that you know what you're talking about and they can't pull the wool over your eyes. I would just want to say that whatever you do, think it through. Don't just jump on the bandwagon. This is a big, fat, hairy deal, especially if you're over 40, 45, because, this may have some impact on your retirement. And if you do leave, make sure that you roll over your 401k into maybe a Roth IRA or another suitable investment so that it continues to grow. But that's really the difference between 25 and 45. I think it's the hireability, promotion opportunities, and your retirement. So really, really think it through if you're in the upper, the higher level of those numbers age-wise. Don't be impulsive. Don't act impulsively. Just really plan out your steps, do your research, do your homework, and not saying don't go, but just make sure that you have a process in place, that you really think it through, and that you do arrange to have some cash cushions so that you can take a leap and land on your feet. I also want to mention that I wrote a blog on the same topic because, you can Morning Moxie, I only have a few minutes, but we also did a podcast, Divas, Diamonds, and Dollars podcast. So I will put that link in the description box so that you can get more detail, because we want to support you in this move if that's what you decide to do. And I really hope that you will let us know how it goes. Do leave a comment below if you decide to take the plunge. So that has been today's Morning Moxie with Larisa. I hope that you have found value in it. And if so, do please share with a friend who could use this information. But in all cases, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. We love to have you here. And that helps the YouTube algorithm, as you know. So we will see you on the next video. Ciao.